Welcome to the DevReady podcast. Joining me on the DevReady podcast today, I have Miriam Wood. I've had a really brief introduction to Miriam, but I'll let her take it away and let everyone know who she is, what she does, and why she's here.
Thanks so much for having me. There's a varied story, and I think everybody's got a story actually. So if I just sprinkle in a few tidbits as to even how we came to talking to each other today, I had an interesting background with getting into coaching, which is the main thing that I do now. And I started off in the fitness industry and worked in nightclubs and running events and all sorts of different things. And then by accident, I fell into selling and marketing pharmacy software. And that was the beginning, I think, of a really fascinating journey for me, because I was so intrigued to understand, I guess, how a product is created, right? You think of, what the user needs and really understanding what's important there. But then, okay, so how do the devs that I'm sitting next to here in the office actually create the stuff? And I would sit with them and I would bribe them with cans of Red Bull and cake and whatever else they wanted. And I would just sit with them and just watch them create this thing, which, fast forward, because I was marketing these products and selling to pharmacies, just thinking, okay, so now that pharmacist can effectively run their business. People like, my parents, grandparents can line up and get their medication when they need, all because of some bright minds that are really diligent and creative at that end, creating this product. So I think that's where I started thinking about tech solutions, customer journey as well, and following on from there. I think, as most of us would have during COVID, had to be a little bit creative with what we're doing, and then fell back into tech again, and this time in wellbeing and coaching for managed services and a professional services business. So it's been a bit of a journey, but it's certainly been a colourful one.
Yeah. So how did you make that transition from the tech sales side to sort of the wellbeing side?
I think, again, going back to, say, the fitness industry, I'd always had that thread of trying to understand, a little bit like that same curiosity that I applied to how software is created. I had that same curiosity into understanding how people tick. So when I was back doing education, training personal trainers, as well as selling the fitness education, so there was a lot involved in what I was doing at the time. I think I was always really intrigued as to motivation, desire, how people achieve their goals, different communication styles, and that stayed with me. So I eventually studied coaching and just soaked up everything I could on mindset. I already had the fitness background, so that bit was easy. But it was interesting, this company that employed me in the end of the first year of COVID, of lockdowns, when we're all still wondering what would happen. They, being, again, a professional managed services business, they were wanting someone who was not an engineer, who was not necessarily technically minded, to come in and actually offer a completely different way of thinking and working, given that most of the team there globally, Australia, US, UK, Philippines, most of them were engineers. I was definitely someone different to join the team, but the main role was to help people who were suddenly working from home and locked down, as we all were, sort of indefinitely, but then also to coach on productivity, performance. So it was a really cool role. I think it was a bit different at the time, but I think I'm now seeing more tech companies have those sort of roles.
Okay, and is the main focus just trying to support the people in the tech space? Because as a background in development and understanding sort of people that go through that, their majority are probably a lot of like introvert and don't necessarily have sort of like those sales or people skills potentially.
Yeah.
There's a quite variety, of course, but
Yeah.
there's a pigeonhole in the description of a geek for a reason.
Yep.
A lot of people fit that mold.
And trust me, that was one of the hardest challenges of my life. I rock in from a completely different world, talking about fitness and mindset, positivity, having great conversations, talking to a bunch of engineers who, like, on Teams, were just like, who is this person? What is she doing here? So yeah, definitely was aware of that stereotype, but also it's not about me. It's about, what does that person need and that person need and what's going on for them. So in a way, sometimes we learn from those hard challenges, because if I just worked with people like me, then either we'd get nothing done or we'd just have a great time, but it would be easy, right? So that was actually one of the most rewarding experiences of understanding how people build trust, of not applying my set of ambition or skills onto someone else. And they were just such a beautiful bunch of guys. It was a really great experience.
It's yeah. Once you get to know the people and you understand what drives them, then that's where it all comes from. So,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
sort of areas are you focusing on now that you're in that space?
I still work predominantly with men. It just so happens, having been in IT, then it's a lot of guys there. And interestingly, that started to give me some ideas about what it is that I'd really love to do. And what I saw happening, I think probably because of the age range of a lot of people I was working with. They're around my age, sort of in 40s and then going into 50s, some heading towards 60, was starting to question, okay, what next? It might have been an engineer all my life, but now I'm getting towards 50. You start to have different thoughts and different questions as you get older. And having that privilege of working with so many people who let me into their inner world, I started to think about what goes on for people, both men and women, but particularly with men, as they get older and go through those key stages of life. And so pulling on the fitness and the well-being, life coaching, as well as straight up career or skill coaching experience, that's what led me to branch out onto my own and run my own coaching business, helping people transition through key stages, because I think change is quite scary when they're, and again, as we get older, we've got rent, we've got mortgages, there's family, there's expectations, there's so much going on for people. And what might really impact you might not impact me, and what might be a really big deal for me, you might look at and be like, oh, you'll be fine, like, just get on with it. So we've all got different things.
Have you noticed that it's like a perspective shift that happens to those people? Because as you get older, different things happen in your life or in relationships, and then in my experience, it's like a perspective shift. You now have a different view on things because you've experienced it, and a lot of the times people tell you things, but you don't understand it until you go through it.
Totally, right? And we think of all those things that we've learnt. What's that saying? You can't put a wise head on young shoulders. And we're warned of things when we're younger and we get all this life advice from our elders. But yes, we often have to walk that path ourselves. I was talking to a client yesterday, and we were revisiting one of his life-changing or perspective moments for him, and how he'd, perhaps as a typical guy, just ignored a health thing that was going on. And he was like, oh, she'll be right, mate. No worries, just get on with it. And it turned out that his appendix was bursting, and he was just thinking it was just a bit of a pain he'd get over. And anyway, so he nearly lost his life, and it was a very dramatic thing that came straight out of a movie, being airlifted halfway across the country. Anyway, but the significance of that story is he's completely changed his priorities, the way that he's productive in the morning, like understanding when he gets his best work done, prioritizing his health, his family, his relationship, his children. So perspective can come with some wisdom and just some of those accumulative lessons that we have as we get older. It can come from life-defining moments. Sometimes they might be upsetting moments, right? Like sometimes our biggest tragedy or catalyst can make us think, well, what is important to me? And I don't have that long left. Like, what would I do if I just put fear to the side and stopped worrying about whether I was the smartest person or what people would think? So every client has a different journey and will have different things that will prompt them to actually go, you know what, this is what I want now, and I'll go after it.
Yeah. Have you seen that there's some consistency in some of the things that people face if you're coming from that tech engineering world, especially when they, like you mentioned, if they've been an engineer for a long time and they're trying to go to potentially a management or branch out on their own and start their own consulting business is where most people go.
Yeah, it's a great question. I actually had one of my former clients branch out on his own and run his own tech consultancy, and he's finding that challenge. And I think anyone who's run their own business will say in the first year, myself included, I've had my own challenges. That first year, like when you're used to getting an income, you're used to being the subject expert matter in your field as well. So if you've been employed somewhere for a while, you've always known certain technologies, been really good at that, and then suddenly being out on your own. One of the key skills that I used to coach engineers with, both at Incentro I worked, and before that it was Quorum Group, because they're very comfortable behind the screen and being great at the tech, but actually having conversations with customers, really how to find out their needs, how to tailor to their communication style. And sales is often a dirty word with engineers. But for me, something that I find really helpful when I talk to people is, and I truly believe this, is that sales is helping people. And so it's not selling somebody something they don't need, the sort of snake oil type thing, but having a really beneficial conversation. So whether you're a consultant, say you're an IT consultant and you're running your own business, or you're getting to the next level in leadership or management, being able to have genuine, relevant, meaningful conversations where you learn to ask, and you can practice, like this is absolutely a skill that you can learn to ask good questions. But if you truly believe that you're there to help people, and it could be, I've got something you need, and there might be a money exchange from it, but gosh, if we can create a good experience and you get the thing that you need, and maybe we identify some other areas that are really going to take it to the next level, then that's a great transaction. What a great exchange where both people walk off feeling happy. So that mindset shift and those skills around conversations, I feel like that's what I've done on repeat, and that's been a big challenge for some people. Because, to be fair, if you've, coded since you were 17, you probably never stopped to learn those skills.
Yep. Well, you don't get the opportunity to learn them because you are an
Right.
engineer or a developer, so they don't put you in front of clients necessarily. The ones that do get
Yeah.
put in front of clients have a bit more of the social skills, if I'll just term it that way. But
Yeah.
they're a bit more personable, or they're able to communicate without probably getting anxious potentially. So those
Yeah.
people slowly move up, but the other people never get to do it because they like being comfortable or controlling their environment and staying in that position. So from our team, we've got a mixture of, when we do personality tests, like the DISC ones,
Yep. Yep.
I'm the like ID side. So I can
Yep.
talk and I can be outside, but I'm very process driven. The most of the developers are the SC, so the controlling environment, don't
Yep.
like change, not adaptable, and
Totally.
that's the split. So I was naturally that kind of person, so I've moved into this side of
Yep.
the business. My business partner's more. I'm the technical one, but it's you need the opportunity to practice. It's like a muscle, like you said, from the fitness industry. Unless you train that muscle, you're not going to get better at
Yeah.
it. And then a sales conversation is really, can you help that person? Just dive in and ask questions to see if you can help. And that's what it comes down to, from my
Yeah.
experience.
I would agree, and that profile of the S or C behavior style. And for anyone watching this who hasn't encountered DISC, you can look up various free online DISC tests, and it's not necessarily about personality. It's about how we communicate, understanding our behavior and how it's likely to show up in certain situations. When I introduced DISC to the Incentra team, I think that was one of the best things that I did, and it's not even my original material. It was somebody else's, somebody else's IP. But giving people, and I think for all of us, the more that we understand ourselves, the way that we think, the way that we operate, and then having a better understanding, so that's self-awareness and then interaction with others, then it takes away some of the judgment, and I think it takes away some of the fear, and just helping people feel empowered. Great, this is how I can practice that conversation. So if I'm, I don't know, if I'm doing a technical scoping session, or I'm in some sort of pre-sales and I'm an SC, or the more analytical, reserved type, but then everyone else on the call are a bunch of IDs, which sound a bit like you and I do, right? Sort of a bit of vibrant, but like to keep a bit of pace and get stuff done. I learn how to tailor that. So if you're someone that likes a process, this actually fits in really well, because you can learn the process to adapt your style, and then help you feel like you can, move out of your comfort zone. You can look at different jobs as well, because you're starting to get that layer of sophisticated communication.
Yeah, and then you can change what will change what they represent in you, because you'll evolve and you'll change. And then
Yeah.
with that disc, just on that, there's also when you're challenged, when you're outside your comfort zone, you can like further retreat into those, or you can step into the other ones. And then
Yeah.
that's where the shift will be between, probably, I'm assuming, the ones that continue being engineers longer term, and then the ones that can, when the pressure steps on, they can move up and perform better.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a really valid point you've mentioned, right? Because what you just said a moment ago about the ability to adapt and to evolve, I do believe most humans have that. It's just that our catalyst or our motivator for doing so will be personal to everyone. So, and in which case, like some of the sales roles, or unless you're a real sort of SME, that the money is often once you start getting into sales, because there might be a commission attached to it as well. So starting to think, okay, well, if I'm here, and this is actually straightforward career planning, really. If I'm here and I want to be there, and we often talk about like desired future state, right? In tech, is what are those skills or what are the bridges that might be there? Okay, so those people that are there, or have got something that I want, like what are they doing differently? You know, how are they communicating? What is it that they've learnt? Because we can all go down the technical certification route, like even in coaching, there's a million courses you can do. And certainly in tech, there's always another cert. But is that the thing that's going to truly elevate you?
Yeah. Do you want to continue down the path you are and become an expert to the like nth degree, or do you want to start branching out and becoming the jack of all trades almost? Like, how far do you want to spread that? I think we've been in a unique position in our business, my business partner. So I don't remember if I spoke when we had the really short catch up call. We started this business 17 years ago in my final year of uni. So this is all I've done as a career outside of working at Coles part-time and some internship and coding classes that I did at uni. So I have had to spread where the skills are. I'm very technical, and I think the benefit that I have is I really like to understand how things work. So I'll focus on the topic, and now I've understood that, and then I can start bringing all those bits. I can join more dots together to present a better solution. Unlike how I'm able to communicate right now. I feel like I'm stumbling. But it's
what a fascinating journey.
it's being able to bring a lot of things together, and then that lets you branch out more, the way I see it.
Yeah, I think also, I mean, there's so much, there's wisdom no matter which path you choose. So whether you've been doing something all your life as an employee or running your own business, like I've changed career so many times and learnt lots of different things. And that also puts me in good stead as well. So we each have our wisdom from that journey. I mean, you're much further ahead in the own business game than what I am. So I think really for any of us that are thinking about where do I want to get to, like what's next? How do I get there? What's my comfort zone at the moment, and what might be the next thing, right? It might be working with a different type of customer. It might be, what's sort of the next big whale, price wise that we aim for. It could be, and if I think of one of the guys, I won't say his name, Mr. D, when his biggest comfort zone change was actually speaking up in meetings. Now, to someone else, that might not seem like a big deal at all, but by incrementally thinking, okay, the only way I'm going to be able to get there is just starting a couple of small steps, whereas I might have stayed silent, like a lot of engineers, like worrying about, will I say the right thing? Like I've got to look smart in front of the customer. That's a big one. So incrementally thinking, okay, it's just little steps moving forward. I've seen some amazing results in the guys that I worked with, and certainly my own clients, not by setting overarching huge goals, but by just going from maybe 5 to 6 and then 6 to 7. Then sometimes you go, 7 to 9 in a jump.
Yep. It's understanding where the person's comfortable, how far they're willing to put themselves outside their comfort zone, so then they can push.
Yeah.
It's like in your fitness way, it's like if you go to the gym, if you know what your maximum weight you can do on something is, if you go close to it, you know that you can then go past it sometimes just by getting that weight. It's the psychological barrier. So it's once you understand that you can do it. I find that I haven't planned our career, like our business, the way you're mentioning, like 3 to 4, 5 to 6, 7 to 9, like in those approaches. But when those little perspective shifts happen, I've read something and there's a quote that's just clicked and I've understood it straight away, and that's shifted everything. It's several moments like that have happened, and it's just it made the gears turn in the right way in my mind that I could understand it, and that's how I move forward with it.
Yeah. Have you got a quote that comes to mind? One of those
there's several.
ones?
So I didn't like hearing my voice on video, so I didn't like making content. This was about 2017 now. It's a long time ago. And then I was at an event on social media marketing or something, and maybe I read it online, but it was, you're the only person who cares and no one's going to notice. Next day I started making videos.
Oof, that's good.
And now, I don't know, probably 600-700 videos of me on the internet talking, and it's not a problem. And then another one was, I think I can possibly be overpowering in conversations or dominate the conversation because it's our business. Like the people may be forced to listen. So another one was always be the last person to speak. So let people talk, understand what they're trying to say, and then do it rather than trying to chime in. Or even if I think I know what they're going to say, which I tend to think I know most conversations are going to go, but it's not always the case. There's just overconfidence.
Yeah, I
There are
think
a
that's
couple of
really
them.
powerful. Yeah, and especially if it taps back into, I'm trying to get all the information so I can assert my position of being the smart one. Like if that's the thing that drives you, then that's a really powerful tool, like really good listening. And again, learning the art of asking some great questions, some open questions. It might seem basic to some people, but do we all practice everything perfectly that we know all the time? Absolutely, we don't. So I think it is, like you said, when you hear a quote or a perspective shift and thinking about, well, how does this apply to me right now? Where can I keep growing? That's the whole idea of why we're here, in this life experience. We're
It's
supposed to have fun. We're supposed to learn and grow.
learn, grow, and enjoy. And just if you want to get better at something, that's the area you focus on and get better so you can deliver better and add value to someone else.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
So
that's what it always comes back to.
I was going to say the podcast is a great tool if it's something about communicating and listening and asking questions because it's an entire conversation that's focused and we've got people listening. Well, we hope there's people listening. So it helps develop that skill. So this is,
Yeah.
I think you might be episode 225 or 230, somewhere in that number. So we've
Wow.
had a bit of experience in doing this.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, indeed.
So in your space, how do you tie together sort of like the life coaching or the career coaching with like the well-being? And like what's the main thread or focus that you're working on in your consulting business?
My why for a really long time, and again, this might have started developing during the fitness industry, but I think in every role that I was in, it was always around helping empower people to really understand the way that they think and move and operate, because there's so much information out there now more than ever, right? Like you can talk to any number of AI tools and get so many answers. But again, is that adding to the overwhelm, or are we actually understanding ourselves? So even, going over the past 20 or so years, that was always something that was important. And if I think back to, this might sound funny, I used to manage nightclubs in London and Ibiza and some in Sydney as well. And seeing an anxious DJ come in, they're tired, they've had back-to-back tours, and it sounds really glamorous for some people looking from the outside, right? But if you can imagine working for a week straight, number of flights, not much sleep, then there's all the excesses that come with touring life as well. Pretty soon you start to freak out a bit. And the difference between just going, oh, I just don't feel like getting on stage today, that can be $500,000. So I had some interesting early learnings from having to coach DJs to pull through and to be able to get on stage. And, sometimes it was, I don't think you need the bottle of vodka. I reckon it's a hug and a cup of tea. Just let's do some breathing exercises, and get back to state.
You don't see a DJ behind the decks with the tea.
You do more now. There's a
Yeah.
big shift towards being sober or soberish with a lot of that crowd as well, which is really nice. Even when I was working at the first tech company, if I saw someone not really clear in their role and not feeling confident of what they were doing, even though I was in sales and marketing, I think I've always really wanted to care for other people and make sure that they were really clear, because if we feel clear on what we're doing, how we do it, how we operate at our best, then we're going to put out good work and we're going to feel more confident. But as we've probably seen, you would have seen working with various companies and clients over the years, you can tell some people aren't happy, or there's a bit of confusion. Someone's trying to do 3 roles, whatever it might be. So that golden thread, and I mention that deliberately because when we're clear on our why, our what and our how. It doesn't matter, if I fell into, I don't know, working in a bakery. I love cake. If I fell into working in a bakery or IT or coaching or back into the fitness industry, it wouldn't really matter what I was doing as long as I get to express my why. And so that's how I tie in the well-being, the life coaching and the career coaching now. And if I share a couple of stories, and it's interesting, I've noticed, I think at the start of this year, people come off New Year's. I know it was 3 months ago now almost, but there's still that flow-on effect of taking a bit of time off, starting to think, and sometimes you don't have time to think during the year, so starting to think about where am I, what do I want, and what's this change. So I've had a lot of requests for help with career change planning. And you know what the number one thing is I hear? I don't really know what I'm good at.
Okay.
Isn't that nuts?
It's interesting that, that you're working. Some people, a job is just a job and they go home and forget about it. So they don't have that. It's a job, not a career. Like
Yeah.
they might have fell into it and they just do it because they have to, or they just turn up.
Yeah.
And you're in a privileged position if you like what you're doing and you can continue doing it. So not knowing what you're doing is probably, initially sounds like a shock, but it probably does make sense.
Yeah.
Or they don't know what they're good at.
Yeah, it's, I've got a pink water bottle next to me, but imagine you've been making pink water bottles all your life. You start to, and again, what I see going on with men, and you can comment, you're a bloke, a lot of people link their identity of what they do for work with who they are. But imagine you're really good at the design and the production and all of those things around pink drink bottles. But that's not who you are. And so when people start to think about some sort of change, and it could be for whatever reason, suddenly, cost of living, whatever, I need more money. What else can I do to generate money? That the challenge is, though, because if we don't know who we are beyond the one or two things that we've always done, and maybe we don't necessarily enjoy it, it's just what we've always done, that can create a sense of powerlessness in people, because that, again, we talk about comfort zone, that fear of moving out of what we've known, doing anything other than that can just seem really overwhelming. And the metaphor that I use would be like standing at the foot of Mount Everest if you've never done any sort of hiking or climbing before. And I mean, I'd probably be the same, right? If I just was dropped at Mount Everest, I'd be like, I'm not climbing that. I've got no idea how to do it. Hell no. But we need a plan. And so we know this in other areas of life. Okay, if you're going to build a house, you don't sort of put up some stilts and a roof on it. You probably have to do a good foundation and make sure it's all level. It all starts with a plan. And that's why I really like helping people with a career change, because it takes planning. It takes a bit of time to think about, well, what is my why, or what lights me up? And sometimes it's a mix of reflection. When have I been at my best? What things came to me really easily? How do I start the day in work doing my best work? So there's things that we look at, like health, our physiology. What are we eating? What's the movement that works for us? Our productivity. Some people aren't morning people, but forcing yourself to get up and do all of this stuff in the morning, that doesn't always work for some people. And for anyone with families, I don't have a family, but a lot of my clients do, what they're dealing with to start the day, which is, kids and a rush off to school and all of this stuff, and then barely make it onto a screen for a 9 a.m. huddle. And then you power through the day. That can make time to stop and think about who you are and what you do very difficult, because you're just on this constant cycle. So it's really good to take a bit of time out and work with someone, be it myself or, a trusted friend or a mentor, and really take a bit of space so you can think about your plan, what goes into it, break it down into steps. Probably not dissimilar to an IT project, right? You don't roll it all out at once.
Process-driven, step-by-step, breaking it up into phases and trying to understand what's the key deliverable, what's going to provide the most value. Start with that and then move step by step. So I'm assuming the first thing you can probably do, if you're in a position and you're not enjoying your work, or you are enjoying it, but you do need to make that transition, is don't just think, from the way you're explaining it, is don't just think about what you're producing. So it's not the pink water bottle. It's what process are you doing to create that? That's what you're actually doing. So then how is that transferable into something else? So you can make blue water bottles now.
Yeah, that's right.
Or some other manufacturing or coordinating or whatever it may be in that role.
Yeah. Well, and I think, again, telling a story of another client I worked with he's also in tech, and he said, well, I'm good at closing, as in closing deals. And I was like, yeah, but what's the thing underneath it? So we did a little exercise. Okay, but why are you good at that, and why? And then and so it's very different, because that's the outcome. You can close a deal, and yes, there might be skills like negotiation or handling objections. But really, for him, what he found then was he's really good at asking questions, and even just the way that, even on an online call like we're doing here, just being really present with the customer and making them feel like he's only looking at them, their full attention. So those things that we might often overlook, that are really those people skills, how we connect, how we ask questions, how we really think how we offer different solutions. That can be the thing that's transferable across so many different jobs. So if you sort of land at that foundation, at the heart of what you're good at, it doesn't take long. We're not talking about sitting in, sessions for months at a time. There's stuff you can actually work through quite quickly. So you feel empowered. This is who I am. This is what I bring to the table. This is what, and unfortunately, we often have to consider what makes money. So this is what I know makes businesses money or makes me money. And when I do this, I can just do this skill or these couple of things on repeat. Okay, great. Let's find ways or different jobs or opportunities where we can amplify it. So it's actually not that scary, but very much like if you just looked at Mount Everest without a plan, you just wouldn't do it. And too many people give up before they've started.
Yeah, and you never know when that perspective shift or that moment will actually happen along that journey. So it could be quicker than you think. You just need to find that right thing that falls into place.
Yeah, that's
So
it.
before we wrap up, what are some key things if someone's at that sort of like crossroads in their career, or they're thinking, do I want to go stay where I am? Do I want to shift up the corporate ladder, or do I want to go out on my own? What are some things that you think that they need to do, like sit down and just put a couple of things on paper to say, all right, this will help me define who I am or what I enjoy doing or what I'm good at and help me move forward?
Yeah. Well, even though obviously I love doing the human interaction as a coach, AI is just friggin' incredible for that stuff now. So the good news is, if you don't like talking to people, you can just chuck all of this stuff in your AI tool of choice and ask some good questions. And it's amazing. So I do try and work with a lot of my clients, especially those who love tech. I'm like, feed it all into, Claude or Gemini or ChatGPT, whatever. Feed it all in there. This is what I've done. This is what I'm thinking about. What would be some interesting ideas? And then where I like to do the human interaction work is then putting that into some sort of plan. We look at things like, what are our beliefs? So if you think that, things like that or big money like that doesn't happen to people like me. Like we've all got sets of conditions and beliefs and the way that we were raised and the way that we think. So we do what I call like sort of a tip it all out on the table. What are we looking at here? What are the priorities? What might be some blockers? What have been some ideas? I can then assist, and again, much like you might from an IT consultant perspective, here's some of the expertise that I can offer from a career coaching perspective to help someone build a vision. What are the elements that we're looking at? Where do we need to get to? That's all good, straightforward planning stuff. But getting excited and starting to think, oh gosh, I could see myself doing that, or wouldn't it be interesting to explore? So as soon as I find most people have got a vision, even if it's not 100%, and then starting to break it down so we've got achievable steps to move towards that, that can really help at a crossroads. Because the main reason that we feel stuck, and it's one of the number one things I hear aside from I don't know what I'm good at, is I'm stuck. I'm at a crossroads. I feel a bit lost. I don't know what's next. That overwhelming fog that we can be looking at there, that's what can cause us to stay stuck. So it's about taking some sort of action. Whether you use AI, whether you talk to a human, whether you do both like I do with my clients as well, and then starting to have a plan with some support and guidance and accountability. And again, if it wasn't me, then it might be a friend or a mentor or someone that you trust. But it's worth it, because when we look at the way things are at your current life, if what's it saying? If you don't change, nothing changes. Well, there might be something more eloquent than that. But yeah, there's all those sort of funny one-liners. Unless something changes, then you actually know probably what it's going to look like for the next, 20 years. So that would be my key advice. If you love tech, make the most of tech. You do need a plan, someone to support you and challenge and hold you accountable as well. And that's what gets you over the line.
And that's some great advice there. It's stuck, and then having to make a change, which is always challenging for people, but just take a step and try it. Even if you don't think it'll help, just use the AI tools, like you said, and ask some questions and see what you can get out of it. And then that might be the thing the catalyst to push you forward. And if you are in that position and people do want to reach out, Miriam, how can they do that?
Oh, you can find me at miriamwood.com. I'm also on LinkedIn as well. So I post a lot of content there, some how-to things, tips, some videos, and certainly anyone can just get in touch for a free call. And it's a matter of just getting to know each other and seeing how I can help. And as I always say to my clients, if I'm not the one to help you, I always try and point you in the right direction and give you something that will get you on your way.
Well, it's been a pleasure speaking to you. I'm sure that there's plenty of information there for people to process and understand, all right, how to assess the situation and figure out which direction to move forward. And it sounds like you'll be a great resource for anyone that's looking to do that. So thank you once again for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.